Welcome, folks, to episode number 51 of the No Conference for Old Men podcast where three old guys are talking Houston Cougars basketball with a bit of Big 12 coverage added in as well, and proud members of the GoCoogs.com network, the undisputed number one Houston Cougars content provider. We're here today again with all three of the old men, Tom Blidiak, former coach, Bill Walker, former player, and myself, Steve Chang, analytics guy for this episode. Well, guys, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times, as Charles Dickens wrote. For our final two games in the Final Four, we started with an epic comeback to inflict a bit of revenge for last year on Duke in Saturday's semi-game, coming back from 14 down to end on a 25-9 run, 9-0 to end the game to close out an epic 70-67 win that was reminiscent of our road win over KU and Lawrence. But that was followed by a heartbreaking loss in the finals to Florida, where we had a 12-point second half lead chipped away to lose by 2, 65-63 at the very end. Truly the tale of two games to end the season. But it does not take away from the epic year that these kids and this team delivered this season. Clearly the best team of this incredible Samson run so far. And for those fans that have been derisive of the team or any of the kids in the aftermath online, I'd say shame on you and shut the F up. These kids gave everything they had. And this is the nature of sport, guys. You never know how things are going to end, and there's always only one winner. So we'll obviously focus on summarizing the two big games, maybe focusing a bit more time on the Duke semi-win, and then close out on looking out into next season, where we've already had a couple of signings out of the portal and I think one addition leaving the program today. So let's get into it, guys, in dissecting our two games versus Duke and Florida. Two great defensive games by our team with completely different results, unfortunately. Both games were determined in the margins, with us wearing down Duke in the first game towards the end and pulling through with a feverish end to the game. And then in the finals, where we had a 12-point lead early in the second, that got whittled away until Florida took the lead at the very, very end. Let's start with you first, Tom. What were some of the things you saw from a coach's perspective in our semi-win over the Blue Devils?
Well, first off, let's talk about the Final Four teams. All four teams were more than capable of winning a national championship. You can't say that every year. You look at Auburn's season, they were number one. I don't know how many weeks of the season. I thought with a couple of weeks left in the regular season, I thought U of H, I thought Duke, and I thought Florida were the three best teams. And then you could throw Auburn in there too. So you have four teams. And they're fighting for one bone, and only one team is going to come out on top. So, but that's the nature of sport. It's not for the faint of heart. All these guys work hard. All four teams. I mean, they come in there in the summer and they're working their guts off, and it's tough to see their seasons end when you know how much sacrifice they put in. The Duke game. What can you say about Duke? Storied program. They're kind of one of those programs where you either love him or you hate him, even though John Shire's, in my opinion, John Shire's kind of changed that a little bit.
Yeah, I agree.
Saw him interview. He's nothing but class. Saw the interview when they got off the bus, when they got back to Durham, and he was talking to some students. And,
yeah, I saw that.
He doesn't make excuses. He gives credit where credit is due, doesn't throw his team under the bus. So he's nothing but class, and appreciate that from after he had Coach K all those years. So, just some powerhouse teams. But let's get back to the game. I thought we were missing some open shots in the first half. Some of those usually go down. Emanuel, LJ, they're usually money on the free throw line. They both missed the free throw. We had Juwan on that fast break. Missed that bunny on that. We had Duke missing a couple of free throws, and then they get the offensive rebound, and then eventually they get a layup. So we weren't finishing off possessions. And then Milo's got two fouls at the 11-minute mark. And we know how that's been during the season. Anytime Milo's has to sit, it's not good for us. We got down 18-9. And then we just kind of clawed our way back in. I thought we were kind of playing a little bit tight. Looked like LJ was keeping us in the game, hitting some shots. But I thought the overall theme in the first half was our failure to finish off possessions with a defensive rebound. It ended up costing us. And having said all that, we're only down 6 at halftime. So Um, I'm sure our staff and Coach Sampson went into the locker room feeling pretty good. Then the second half starts. We were scoring, but we couldn't get any stops. We were just basically trading baskets. We were down at 6 at halftime. We're scoring, and it kind of looks like we're getting back in this game. But you look up there, and we're down by 8 or 9 just because we couldn't get any stops. Get down 49, 59, 45. We're down by 14, and it's looking bleak. I don't know how he came back and how he won this game because people are saying if you look at all these statistics, nothing makes
Yeah.
sense. But that's why you play the game. That's why the games aren't played on paper. They're not played with computer data or whatever. It comes down to the players. We made a fabulous comeback. A lot of key plays by different Cougars. We went to the press, and Duke had problems getting the ball in. Kind of like you said, Steve, the Kansas game, and just an incredible game that if you're a passionate Houston Cougar fan, that's one of those games you'll never forget. You'll never forget where you were, who you were with. In my case, Bill, I wasn't with I wasn't in a sea of red. I was down in my basement by myself watching the game. So that's the way I kind of like to watch a game. If I'm going to watch a game, I'm going to watch it by myself so I can concentrate on it. But yeah, what more can you say? These guys will go down in Houston Cougar lore with that incredible comeback. People all over the country are talking about that game.
Yeah, completely agree. Bill, how about your views of the semi win from a player's perspective?
First of all, I've never attended anything remotely close to this in my entire life. This was my fifth Final Four. I've attended 3 college football national championship games, all where I had a school in the game, dog in the hunt. NBA, NHL finals, World Series, Super Bowls, but nothing has come even remotely close to what I experienced Saturday through Monday. Secondly, some important mentions. Kevin McAlpin, who after I suffered or went through a late ticket travel and accommodations snafu, took care of items 2 and 3 for me. So thank you very much, Kevin. And for item number 1, Ronnie Bradshaw, longtime Cougars athletic supporter, fraternity brother, stepped up, worked his network, worked his magic, and got me tickets at cost in great seats in the Coug sections for both games. Ronnie, I owe you big. And lastly, to address some idiots, Wally Zerbiak, who insisted that Duke, who was bigger and more talented, would easily win by double digits. Adam Rittenberg, a complete dolt from ESPN, who wrote, "There are 3 teams in San Antonio that play a beautiful brand of basketball, and then there's Houston. Great team, great coach, but just a brutal watch. I've tried, but I can't."
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
lastly, John Fanta, and I guess I'll give John some credit because I heard afterwards that he did predict us to beat Florida, but when predicting us versus Duke, said Duke has Cooper Flag. Enough said. Thank you all for your unchallenged, your uncompromised idiocy. In terms of the game, what an emotional roller coaster. And it was, for a lot of it, it was painful. Down 9 with 2 minutes left. And then the euphoric ride began. Sharp, Wilson, Roberts, Tugler, Duke foul, Duke turnover. And the elation was nothing. And sorry, Stephen and Tom, that you could possibly imagine not having been there.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Everyone locked arms. Both men and women were crying passionately, screaming and cheering like nothing I've ever experienced. As you mentioned, Steve, this was the Kansas comeback, but it was the Kansas comeback on mega steroids. Roberts hit 2 huge free throws. Tugler, following his tee, blocked Knippel's layup, rebounded Wilson's 3 with a dunk. Wilson deflected the Sion James inbound pass that led to the aforementioned dunk, and Sharp hit that monster 3-pointer after getting the ball from Uzan, faking flag off the court practically, and drilling the 3 to cut Duke's lead to 3. Considering the circumstances, the opponent, the fact that we were the underdog going into the game. This was absolutely the greatest game I've ever witnessed, and thank you so much for that, Cougs. And thank you also, Cougs, for holding Duke to 67 points, holding them to under 40% from the field, out rebounding them 42-31, including 18-10 on the offensive boards. And finally, thank you to the officials for letting both teams play, which, as you might imagine, will lead me into the next game.
Yeah, no kidding. When looking at the game from an advanced analytics perspective, obviously we all had great respect for Duke coming in. But I actually went in pretty calm given how we'd been playing up to that point. But with a week to prepare, I thought Shire came in with a great game plan and had his team really well prepared early, at least, for the defensive onslaught we were about to unleash. Duke actually led and controlled much of the game, as you guys had both mentioned, but as has been the case all season, the game never got out of reach and we just continued to just hang around. This ended up being a great defensive game on both sides, with us just slowly figuring things out on the offensive side in the final, let's say, quartile of the game, final 10 minutes or so, while also slowly sucking the air out of Duke's offense as the game wore on. Both teams actually shot under 47% effective field goal percentage for the game, Duke ending up under 40% from 2-point range, and that's incredibly low for such a great shooting team. But they paid close attention to not turning the ball over, and they ended up at under 12% for the game, which made it really tough for us to catch up for much of the game. We made our big run in the final 10 minutes, as I mentioned, outscoring Duke 25-9 at that point. And it was that final push with 1:14 left where we finished with an 11-1 run, last 9 points of the game, that won the game. And though Cryer and Roberts made critical free throws at the end, I felt the big difference makers in the final stretch were Sharp and Tugler. Sharp with 2 free throws and a monster 3, and then Tugler with a huge block on Knipple, and then an offensive rebound and follow-up dunk off a Wilson miss that got it to 1 with under 25 seconds left. Key stat of the game that made the difference for us in the end. Almost 17% block rate on their 36 two-point attempts and over 42% offensive rebounds. Again, similar to what we did against Tennessee. It resulted in 8 more field goal attempts than Duke, and we crossed over that magical 20 3-point attempts for the game, again, that I highlighted as key for us during the tourney. It appeared we were destined to win it all at that point. But again, that's kind of the beauty and the cruelty of the sport. You can't script it like a movie, and we just came up short 65-63 in the championship game versus Florida when we led for the vast majority of the game. Bill, why don't you go first with your players' perspective on the championship game versus Florida?
As exhilarating, ecstatic, and euphoric as I felt following the Duke game, a little more than 48 hours later, my disposition took a total 180-degree turn. I actually felt a little uneasy after we were up 52-40 in the second half. The first 6 fouls of the second half within 3 minutes were all called on Florida, which was just shocking to me. And just because of the nature of the way we play, we're aggressive. We rebound on both ends. We get in your face, and we're the ones typically called for the fouls. And it's, based on the way we play. But the first 6 fouls right off the bat were called on Florida. And then they receive a technical foul as well. And like I said, I was a little concerned. In fact, I turned to the gentleman on my left and I said, I'm worried that the makeup calls are about to rear their ugly heads. Imposter referees Ron Groover, Terry Oglesby, and Doug Simmons did not disappoint. NCAA, if that's the best you can put on the floor of an NCAA title game, maybe you should perhaps figure out a way to funnel some NIL money to incentivizing refs to at least do an adequate job. Yeah. Clearly, these 3 clowns felt an overwhelming desire to upstage what was a great game, 2 great teams, and get themselves as much airtime as possible. I mean, first half, they called 4 total fouls, and of course, 1 blatantly missed goaltending. Second half, Florida was called for the 6 fouls in less than 3 minutes. Then the insanity began. We were called for 11 of the next 12 fouls.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It was unreal. 3 in one single possession. And they ended up calling 26 fouls in the second half, which just for an NCAA championship game is just unreal. I'll agree with Adam Rittenberg that this game, because of all the stoppages, all the whistles, this game was almost unwatchable. Uh, but when referees have no intention of letting the players play in a game of this magnitude, Groover, Oglesby, and Simmons should have been benched, and replacements should have been put in. Period. In terms of the game, Calvin put it best. He said we couldn't make a shot in the second half. We held Florida to under 40% from the field, under 25% from three. Clayton, their best player, best scorer, shot 3 of 10 and 1 of 7 from three. Martin, their second leading scorer, shot 2 of 10 from the field, 1 of 6 from three. Florida's third option, Rich, was the only reason, aside from the non-goaltending call, that UF was even in the game at halftime. And by the way, the final 2 minutes of games can take 2 hours, so that every play can be reviewed and every tenth of a second, can be accounted for. But unless goaltending is actually called, that can't be reviewed. And that was a 5-point swing at the end of the first half. And it makes no sense that you could spend so much time in the final 2 minutes of a game going over every minute, just second or tenth of a second of everything, but somehow that can't be looked at. I don't know, unreal. As Kelvin said, just as bad a shooting game, 35% from the field, 24% from three, 64% from the line. Cryer led us with 19, despite going 6 of 18 from the field. But I would say our star, when the refs allowed him on the court, because they called 2 fouls against him in one possession, and it was clearly Francis. I mean, he had 8 points, 6 boards, 2 blocks, and one just indescribably athletic dunk. I would say dunk of the tournament. He played a great game, and as much as I wish Sharp would have let Clayton, fly by like he did with Flagg, or go up into Clayton and get fouled at the end of the game, time was running down, and Sharp did what he thought he needed to do. Clayton made a good play defensively, and unfortunately, that was it. People like complete idiots, and Steve, you referred to it. They're going to come down on Sharp and on that final play, but it never should have come to that. We should have won that game and not had to attempt a final shot to either tie it or to win. Negatively, Sharp was only 3 of 11 from the field, 1 of 7 from three, and that didn't help. But neither did Uzan, shooting. And Uzan, by the way, didn't shoot well for the entire tournament. 2 of 9 in the championship game, 0 of 4 from. Roberts was 3 of 13, and Cryer missed 12 shots. I mean, it was a brutal night, and like Calvin attested to, and stated, we just couldn't hit a shot in the second half. Just a miserable offensive night, and just absolutely painful post game to see how badly this hurt Sharp, Cryer, Roberts, and to know this was the final game for Cryer, Roberts, Wilson, Francis, and now, as it turns out, likely Uzan and Arsenault. Really painful for Calvin and the staff as well, in what should have been Calvin's 800th win, and it's just utterly excruciating. In the end, though, it was a phenomenal season. I think eventually I may feel better, but to see that happen after seeing the Duke win and really knowing and feeling that it was our time and Calvin's time, just kind of makes me hate even talking about this.
Yeah, completely agree. Hey, Tom, how about you from a coach's perspective on the Florida game?
Yeah, before I talk about the Florida game, just something I missed out about the Duke game, talking about it. Duke hadn't been in hardly any close games all year long, and they had a really young team as far as you look at Cooper Flag and you look at Concanipple and Malawach, and every one of their games they either missed some shots or turned the ball over in crunch time, and that's kind of what happened to us. When we played them is, Cooper missed that last shot. Really good defense by Juwan. But anyway, enough about the Duke game. That one's over too. But heading into the final game, you had kind of a interesting coaching matchup. You have Todd Golden, who's 39 years old, and you have Kelvin, who's 69 years old. So there's a 30-year difference there. Me being an old coach, I'm going to turn 63 here in about a week and a half. There's kind of and it happens with every generation. It's the young generation. They just crap on the old coaches. I heard Tom Izzo called up Kelvin, and he said, for me and for Rick Barnes, for Tubby Smith, he says, Kelvin, go out there and win one for the old guys. I just kind of see a lot of disrespect in the coaching circles, especially the young ones, toward the coaching style of Kelvin, and it rubs me the wrong way. You look at what Kelvin's done at U of H. I don't care how old he is, whether he's 69 years old or whether he's 29 years old. But I just kind of get sick and tired of that with some of these young guys. So I was really hoping, for Kelvin's sake, that he would win it, and that'd be the crowning achievement in his long career. But enough of that too. Going to the game, we were up by 12, and I just kept coming back to we're Houston Cougars. Are we really going to win this? And there's a word called the fucking. It's where everything is going great, but in the back of your mind, something's bad is going to happen. And I just kind of had that feeling the minute I got the thing visualizing Kelvin and Stav hugging each other and hugging his wife, hugging his daughter, hugging Kellen, and the staff just maybe in a big circle hugging and confetti coming down. Then I thought, okay, well, let's see what happens. But anyway, you guys talked about fouls, but boy, the game was officiated, and I say this kind of jokingly, but if you want to get a foul called, do one of two things: either fall down, like Galen Robinson says, just fall down. They'll call a foul. We saw that in the Texas Tech game where I think it was Malik I can't remember who he was guarding, but the dribbler just fell down. He didn't even touch him. They called a foul, and that was 2 free throws. And then the next possession, they hit a 3, and they tied it up. And that was only loss in conference play. And then the next thing is probably within the first 3 or 4 minutes, just go batshit crazy and get a T, because you're guaranteed to get the next 10 fouls called against the opponent. I was texting back with Randy Randall in the game, and I told Randy, I said, expect the next 10 fouls to go against us. I mean, it wasn't 10. Was it 6?
It's close.
Was it 6 or 7?
It's a 9-0 run, I think, of fouls called on us.
It was 10 out of 11.
Yeah. And it was the same thing that happened in the Tech game when McCaslin threw his little tiny fist in the air and did all his antics when Toppin was ejected. But anyway, yeah, that game was so close. It was like Charlie Brown about to kick the football, and Lucy picks the football up, and Charlie Brown falls flat on his ass. So close. The Wile E. Coyote almost getting the road runner, and he's about that close to getting the road runner, and then something bad happens. So Kelvin mentioned something early in the game when they interviewed him about nerves on both teams. While the shooting was so bad, Emanuel had some wide open looks and shots that he normally makes, and they weren't even close. I mean, they were like wide left, wide right. Milo's had some shots where he missed everything, missed the whole basket, air ball, but it wasn't just short. It was like off to the left, and he had a couple of shots blocked that I hadn't seen happen all year long. but give credit to Florida. Florida played really, really good defense. You got to give credit to them because one thing I said about the SEC all year long was that there wasn't a whole lot of defense played in that league. But Florida stepped up and they made the stops when they had to. And then you
Excuse
get
me,
to the end of the
Tom.
game. Yep.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but in terms of the missed shots, and like I said, it was both teams missing them. It's hard as hell to be hitting shots and really to get into a rhythm when the game is stopped every 20 seconds.
Yep.
And this isn't to say that the officials were, coming after U of H or making horrible calls against U of H. They were just blowing the whistle left and right. It was nonstop. It was everything. I mean, 26 fouls in one half. It's hard to get into a rhythm, and it's hard to
Yeah,
shoot
you
well
can't.
and
Yeah.
do anything offensively when the game
Yeah, you
is
can't get. There's no
consistently
flow. There's no
stopped.
flow to the game. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no flow. And for all the idiots out there that were dogpiling on Emanuel, first off, Emanuel's he's a great guy, super human being. I'm sure he would love to have that situation over again, but that's sports. Sometimes
Exactly.
you're the hero, and sometimes you aren't. But you just can't place it all on Emmanuel either. I think we talked about this the other day. Is he doesn't have to go up in there and travel or whatever he did if Joanne sets a good pick. It kind of looked like it might have been an elevator play because I heard Kelvin say he said something about the gate, which is an elevator play where you have a shooter go in between two bigs, and it's like going through the elevator, and then the two bigs, close up the elevator doors. And so it kind of looked like Jawan and JVA were supposed to set an elevator screen, but it didn't happen. So, but you can't blame him, Emmanuel. We had 4 turnovers on our last 4 possessions, so we didn't
Exactly.
get a shot off, in those last 4 possessions, and then of course you get people on the internet, these grifters or whatever that make a living,
Yeah.
Breaking down basketball plays and all that, and they don't coach. They just go out there and they put clips on there, and they're ripping Kelvin about his play calling, whatever. So that kind of stuck in my crawl. But when you look at the whole picture, we went 35-5.
I know.
Made it to the national championship game. Gave us great moments during the season, and the way I look at it is you got to enjoy the journey. You can't just look at the
Exactly.
end result. You got to look at the games. That's as a fan that start in November, and every time these guys hit the floor, we have to enjoy it because pretty soon the season's over with, and this collection of players we'll never get to see again. Some of them will go on to have professional careers or whatever, but there's nothing like being on a team that's close knit as a college basketball team. And as a fan, owe it all to the coaching staff and the players for having this tremendous season. It's just too bad we fell a little bit short.
Yeah, I couldn't say it any better, Tom. I mean, we had such a great year, and you just can't let the last game ruin a spectacular season, right? And so for me, I'm not going to go into the advanced analytics for this game. It'd be too painful. I'm not going to subject anyone to it. I mean, going in, we all predicted a tight one here, but we all felt pretty confident coming in with Coach Sampson at the helm versus Florida on only 2 days prep. It's like, come on. No team can be remotely ready for our level of intensity and physicality on D with that kind of a turnaround. And this proved to be the point at the start as well as in the second half, where Florida was pressured and turned the ball over 9 times in the first half. But unfortunately, we just weren't able to capitalize, leading only by 3 at the half, 31-28, after having issues getting points on the board. Now, we turned things up a notch to start the second, as you guys highlighted. We were up by 12 with 16-24 left, but that's where Florida just started to chip away at our lead the rest of the way. And they actually ended up taking the lead at, it was really only 46 seconds left on the clock. What I'll leave folks with is, hey, the key stats of the game that really eliminated our chances to pull this one out is you guys highlighted 4 turnovers in our last 4 possessions with no shots off, while only turning the ball over 5 other times for the other 38 plus minutes of the game. So close to our first championship that I'm sure the kids could actually taste it, but the cruelty of it all is that we end up losing by 2. But, for me, in my old age, I can actually deal with it a bit better than I could when I was much younger. What I really ache for are the kids on the team, especially the ones that are graduating. But you know what? We now turn the page to next season where hope springs eternal, like with all the other teams. So I know it's early, guys, and we'll do a more thorough, kind of full-fledged analysis once the portal season ends. But let's maybe pivot to something a bit more positive and let's start looking at the outlook for next season. Tom, you can go first. What's your coach's perspective on what you expect to see going into next season?
What's the unknown to me is where the 3 highly talented freshmen are going to fit in. I'm not an insider. I can't jump in Coach Sampson's head and see what he's thinking, but it's going to be interesting. We know when Jarris came in, he started right off the bat. Well, we got 3 Jarrises now,
I know.
That's going to be interesting to see how these 3 are utilized. We don't know yet what the roster is going to look like because we haven't heard yet what Milos is going to do. So that's going to be whether he goes to the NBA or whether he stays for another year. That's going to change kind of the makeup of the team. So, and then we had Terrence leave today, which I think is a win-win for both parties. And then we picked up the big kid from Sam Houston State. I'm not sure what his role on the team is going to be, whether he's coming in as like maybe a third or fourth big as insurance in case of injury or in case CNAC doesn't pick up things, quickly. So for me, it's kind of a wait and see, and see what happens with the portal and see if we have more movement on the roster. With Qantas going to Louisiana, we might have a player, maybe 2. You never know, that maybe want to go with him because they're familiar with the system, and then be a chance for them to get more playing time than it would be if they're here at U of H. We don't know Ramon's status yet, whether he's going to get that. They're going to grant him that extra year. So just kind of a bunch of unknowns here so far, and the portal's open till like April 26th, I believe it is. We picked up Pop Isaacs. We'll see. In Kelvin we trust. We talked about that I think the other day. So we'll see. A lot of fans weren't crazy about Milos, and look what he did. So
exactly.
And Kelvin's been pretty good with his transfer guys so far. Damian Dunn probably being the one that's the most egregious as far as not working out. But, Dunn did contribute a little bit. It's not like he was just, I'd say he had probably more of an impact than A.J. Storr did at Kansas.
Yeah. I mean, Tom, we kind of chuckled a little bit as you talked about the portal ad there. But, quite honestly, if you do a comparison, we used to goof on Pop Isaacs when he was still at Tech, given his lack of D and maybe taking some questionable shots. But if you look at player box score plus minus, and especially on the defensive end where we focus so much for our program, his numbers are eerily similar to Cryer's numbers before joining our program, right? Cryer was a negative 0.4 defensive player box score the year before he joined. And then if you look at the last year for Pop Isaacs at Tech, he was a negative 0.3. So both of them were negatives, right, on the defensive side. But look at Cryer and how far he came. And so I think if anyone's going to turn him around, right, this staff is going to turn around the defensive intensity, right, with Pop Isaacs.
I'm not sure, I don't know Pop Isaacs like whole game, but probably one thing that hurt us in the Florida game is we didn't have a Jamal Shed where you could just give him the ball and tell everybody else just get the hell out of the way and don't get in the way. And I mean, the type of players we had that they need a ball screen, they need a pin down.
Agree.
You got to set a flare for them, and all those actions, can can be guarded.
Yeah.
But it's very, very tough to just spread the floor and go like a 1-4 and 4 on the baseline and give it to a Shed and say, hey, go get a basket, go get a bucket. Maybe Kingston Fleming's is that guy.
Most definitely.
Maybe it's Pop Isaacs, But no knock on LJ or Emanuel, but they just aren't those. They just aren't those type
not
of
their game.
players.
Agreed. Bill, how about you from a player's perspective on next year?
Well, first of all, I like Isaacs. I've liked him for a long time. Didn't like him as much at Tech because he was a threat. I mean, he's a definite threat.
Yeah.
And he's a shoot first. He's more of a shoot first point guard. But when he was playing at Tech, they had a small backcourt. It was him and it was, if you recall, Joe Toussaint,
That's
who
right.
had come from West Virginia. It was kind of like starting 2-point guards. So Isaacs was a big time scorer, and I love the fact that he's great from the outside. He could shoot from deep, but he could also put the ball on the floor and get to the hoop. He is absolutely what's referred to as a 3-level scorer, and I love that about him. And I love that he'll be bringing that offense to U of H. And obviously, Calvin's seen something in him from the defensive side of the ball, or else he wouldn't have brought him in. And I have complete faith and trust in Calvin. If Calvin wants him, then there's absolutely no reason to doubt that. In terms of 3 Jarrises, I'm not so sure that that's the case. Obviously, we've got 3 5-stars, but I've got to imagine, and I could be wrong, but I've got to imagine that Isaacs is going to start, especially due to his experience. Sharp's obviously going to start, and that means that our third backcourt player is either going to be Harwell or Flemings, and I'm guessing it's probably going to be Harwell, which means we won't have the 3 freshmen starting. It'll probably be, I would think, Flemings coming off the bench, which is fine with me.
Yeah, the point guard,
because we're going to have a lot of depth in the backcourt. At small forward, we obviously lost Terrence today, and it's tough. I've been down on Terrence probably more so than most this year, and I part of it's because I expected a lot out of him from the time he came here out of Beaumont. But at small forward, someone that plays that position in the 6'5" to 6'8" range. I don't know. We've got Jackson coming in. He's the one non-5-star that's coming in, but I heard that he and I didn't see
he needs
much
time,
of him in terms of highlights this year, but I heard he had just a great senior year, and I think that he could, from what I understand, from what I've heard, I think that he could very likely contribute in year one. And then we have McCarty as well, who be a small forward, and we'll see what he brings to the table. But there is some depth for sure. The front court, the one that concerns me is that we may not have an inside scorer, a consistent inside scorer like we had with Juwan, who could get the ball, use his big body, get inside and score down low, draw fouls. I hope, and I have no doubt that Tugler can step up and become more of an inside scorer, and I expect that out of him. I also have only seen highlights of Senac, but I get the impression that he's not quite as physical a player down low as Roberts was. So we'll see. But if Senac can provide some inside scoring, that would be enormous. And then we've also got McFarland coming back off the injury. He's not an inside scorer. He's more of a shot blocker, and hopefully he could continue putting on some weight over the summer and become more of a physical presence inside. But he's a kind of a thin, lanky, tall, long read, kind of like Javier and come in, block shots, and develop his game offensively. And like I said, get stronger and become a force inside. But I certainly like what we've got coming back next year, and I'm assuming that Uzan has to be gone. Otherwise, I don't think Isaacs would have been coming in. I think.
We don't know. There's still hope until it actually occurs, right? We gotta assume he's
Well, yes,
still
you
here.
can hope, but I mean, is Fleming's going to be your third point guard? I just I don't see it. I
don't. So if we play out a scenario where, let's say, because I think you're right, we all believe Uzan will likely go pro, right? If his stock hasn't dropped too much, but if he comes back, I don't think Pop Isaacs will play point.
Combo.
Yeah,
Combo
he'll be
guard.
strictly scoring. He'll be strictly scoring. You'll have 2 point guards between Uzan and Flemings. I think if Uzan goes, then yeah, you might have Pop Isaacs start for a little bit just to get things rolling. And you're still going to see Flemings is not a guy that's going to be sitting much. I mean, there's no chance he comes here to sit.
I haven't heard
half the
every.
game.
don't think
I haven't heard every
Isaacs
interview
comes here
with
to
Kelvin.
sit either.
No, but he'll start on the wing then, right?
But hey,
One of the
guys,
wing
Okay, but
positions.
we've also got Sharp and we've got Harwell.
Yeah,
I mean, who are you expecting to? Which of I'm assuming Harwell or Flemings are you expecting to come off the bench? Because if you've got Sharp, you've got Sharp and you've got Isaac starting, then the third wing player or guard has got to be either Flemings or Harwell.
Yeah. I mean, you're
and
right.
One of them comes off the bench, and if Uzan's back, then maybe both freshmen are coming off the bench.
I would expect them to come off the bench. They'll still get plenty of minutes, though. I think they'll get plenty. They'll be big time in the rotation. At least half the game they'll be on the court. Right.
Well, in my mind, I'm virtually positive that Milos is going to the NBA. I got to imagine that he's heard from his agent, his people around him, whoever that, and ESPN I know has projected him to go right around 40, which is the top third of the top quarter of the second round of the draft. And Shed went toward the bottom of the second round and signed for 3 years for $2 million a year. So I think if Uzan knows that he's going in the top third to top quarter of the second round, that he's on his way out. And yes, I'd love it for him to stay, but I just don't think he's going to.
Hey, fellas, when you listen to Kelvin talk, I haven't heard him in every single interview. I really haven't heard him say much about Harwell or Cenac, but there's like a little twinkle in his eye when he talks about Flemings.
I agree. He talked about him.
Point guards.
Yeah, he was like, Flemings is a pure point guard. I love the way he plays. Yeah, I heard Kelvin speak about him, and yes, I completely agree with you, Tom. He is very high on Flemings, and I think we all are.
Yeah.
I know Steve and I have had conversations about him, and we're both a little more fired up about him than we are anyone else, although I really like Harwell also. But yeah, and I think that's another reason why it's probably okay on both sides, both Uzan and U of H, that he's going to go pro, because I think that Calvin feels like Flemings can step in and contribute heavily right off the bat, and Isaacs has dished the ball enough with Tech, and actually I don't know what he did at Kansas before he redshirted, Creighton. Other than the big game against Kansas where he
his numbers were
scored
all up.
27 against them, but I think that Calvin's got to feel pretty good with our entire backcourt. The point, the two guard, and the three, or the third guard. Yeah, for me, it's production out of the small forward when the small forward comes in, and what we do with in terms of inside scoring.
Okay.
I got a question
But
for you guys. Okay, this past season when we went small, Terrence played the 4.
Yeah.
Next year, when we go small, or if we go small,
I don't think we will. We'll have enough bigs where we're not going to have to go small.
but sometimes it's matchups though. When we need a quicker 4.
Yeah, but I don't think we have that guy. And we'll find out after the portal season's over, right? If we add any more. But if you look at the makeup and the size of the kids, it's all like 6'5", 6'6" wings, and then 4 bigs, right? We don't have anyone that kind of fits that mold to be a stretch 4, right, so to speak. And maybe that gets added on. We'll see. I mean, what I'll say here is, come on, guys. I expected a bit more energy. I know we just lost, but going into next season, if you look from a player's analytics perspective, before we know everyone and who's coming back, we're going to be loaded next year. We've got 3 of our top 6 player box score plus minus players back. Well, potentially unknown around Uzan, right? You got Sharp, Tugler, Uzan, but I would argue as long as we can get Sharp and Tugler back, man, I am a happy camper. Then we've got Walker, Miller, Jefferson, McFarland, McCarty, Lott potentially back from the bench. And then you add in our best recruiting class ever coming in. 3 5-stars, Cenac, Flemings, Harwell, plus you'd say a 3/4-star in Jackson coming in. And to top things off, we've got 2 additions in the from the portal with Sacco at center and Isaacs at kind of a combo guard. Obviously, some of these kids are likely going to still be leaving because we usually only carry like 13 kids on the roster. Plus, our numbers moving forward need to be capped at 15 with a house settlement forthcoming. But this would be the most talented, though youngest, team ever under Sampson based on historical star ratings combined with experienced talent. Now, I'm not going to speculate on potential departures and stuff, even though we kind of did a little bit on Uzan, and we'll know really shortly where we stand. But, I think Uzan, Tugler, Sharp, they're all going to go through the NBA evaluation process in the next month. But even with some potential departures there to the transfer portal or going pro, I think the balanced makeup of the roster will allow us to handle any of those departures. In fact, the consensus way too early preseason top 25 that are out there has us as an overwhelming number 1 preseason in the country at this point. That's 8 out of 10 rankings have us number 1, followed by Duke, Purdue, UConn, and then Louisville. So come on, man. I'm fired up about next year. I mean, granted, I'll be honest. I agree. It's young, and that's not typical of what we've had before. And I would argue that I'd be shocked if it ends up being a better team than this year, because this year was a special team. But I've called next year's team the most intriguing team of the Sampson era because of
it'll have a higher ceiling.
Oh yeah, the ceiling is like limitless. I mean, you're talking about a Duke-like freshman class coming in, and so I can't wait to see what Coach Sampson is able to mold that kind of talent into over the course of the year. So I'm fired up. I mean, I'll tell you what, I'll be going to even more games. I'll be flying in from California for even more games to see what Coach Sampson and staff have in mind for these kids, because it's gonna be outrageous. It'll be fun. And with some of the other big time freshmen that are coming in at BYU and Kansas, it's gonna be a fun ride next year.
Oh, I'm fired up too. I just kind of I'm waiting for the dust to settle, with the roster.
I'm just kidding. I know. It's tough. It's tough. I'm just trying to fire up our fans right after a really devastating loss. So let's.
And it was less than 24 hours after our loss to Florida that the news came out that we got Pop Isaacs.
I know, crazy, right?
And yeah, that got me over the hump of losing a little bit, knowing that hey, Kelvin's starting to put some pieces together for the team next year.
Yeah, agreed.
Bill, also, you mentioned that.
That also led me to absolutely be convinced that Milos is going to the NBA.
Yeah, we'll
It
see.
didn't happen that quickly.
Yeah, he hasn't had his assessment yet, so we'll see. We'll go over the details once the portal closes. I think I think it's like around the 25th of May or something like that. Or no, it's actually later this month. It's actually just 2 weeks away, I think, is when the portal closes. So we'll do a full-fledged summary and outlook for next year at that point.
Steve, I was having a conversation with Rob James early, and he brought up an interesting point, and it may not happen this year. At least, hopefully, it doesn't happen this year, but we could be heading toward it. Who's to say that before the season starts, that someone like BYU, who's paying $7 to $10 million per, doesn't come in at the last minute and offer CNAC $10 million to leave at the last second, and all of a sudden he's playing for BYU next year.
Hey.
This upcoming. I mean,
shut your mouth. We're trying to end on a positive note on this.
Chances are utterly remote that something like that happens, but that's more to a commentary on the state of college basketball, and we can get into more of that when we talk in the postseason this summer when we're talking about NIL and some of the other stuff. But but it's I don't know.
No, I'm excited about next year. So,
I am too.
It's going to be a fun ride, so enjoy it, guys.
I am too. It's just going to take. It's still going to take a little while to get over this. And I know Steve, you had talked about, you felt badly for the player and the graduating player, and this was, the end for them and everything. I still feel the most badly for Calvin. I mean, Calvin could have easily won a title in 21, where we also lost in San Antonio to Villanova on the game where, ironically, another game where we just couldn't hit a shot. And then last year, if Shed doesn't go down, I will never not be 100% convinced that we're not in the title game against UConn. And UConn had a great team last year, but who knows? I just think that Calvin could have won titles by now and absolutely deserved and coached as well as you can coach, and had the team that should have won on Monday night. And unfortunately it didn't happen, but I just feel badly for him. And so I'm still a little, I'm not quite on to next season yet.
Yeah.
I will be, but I'm not quite there yet.
Okay. Well, we'll see how you feel in a couple of weeks. So when we do our next episode. So that's it for our 51st episode of the No Conference for Old Men podcast. We hope you all enjoyed it. And again, we'd really appreciate it if folks would follow, subscribe, or collect our podcast, depending on your podcast platform of choice. We are also available via the Republic of Football podcast feed from the folks at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, as the only basketball-centric podcast, or at the GoCoogs.com website for those that prefer to digest the content that way. We appreciate the continued support from all, and please give us a follow on our Twitter account, No Conference for Old Men. Thank you all again for listening, and be on the lookout for our first off-season episode in the coming weeks after the portal season has ended to download and listen. Take care, everyone.